Your property rights are being eroded right under your nose. By now, you've likely heard of the Great Reset, and you will own nothing but be happy. Most people by now understand the subscription business model, Netflix, Spotify, etc. And the same can be said about renting a property. We are slowly becoming generation rent, and long-term renting is becoming the norm. Is this going to be the future? And if it is, should we be worried about it? What ways can we take advantage of it, and what actions can we take to protect ourselves? Whether you think the Great Reset is real or conspiracy theory, in reality it is getting harder and harder to buy a home for yourself. It's also getting harder and harder to hold on to family homes due to increasing costs of inheritance tax. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, it will impact you equally. It doesn't matter if you think governments are buying up way too many homes or private equity firms are buying up way too much homes either. The results are the same. The middle class is getting squeezed out of the market more and more. The Great Reset, you will own nothing and be happy, is a strategy and a goal from the World Economic Forum. Some may call it a conspiracy theory, but YouTube will leave a link below for you to check it out yourself because they are a member of the forum. The World Economic Forum is made up of political leaders from all over the world, as well as some of the world's biggest companies. Some of those companies include some of the funds that have been trying to buy up homes all around the world, including Blackstone and BlackRock. It's not hard to actually imagine that some of the world's biggest companies will want to control more property. And it's also not the biggest stretch of the imagination that many left-leaning governments will also want to control more homes and the population as well. As we all should know, renting is very common in some countries, particularly in Germany and particularly in big cities within Germany. Cities like Berlin have nearly 80% of the population renting. I don't see it as a conspiracy theory to imagine some more elements will want more people to move to the rental model. Most people by now will be aware that major funds have been buying up homes all around the world, mainly close to cities. But less people will be aware that governments have been spending huge amounts on renting and buying up homes within the private market, further reducing supply within the middle class and forcing them to rent from these funds. It's getting harder and harder for small-time landlords to make a profit. This means many small landlords are leaving the market and the large funds are the ones to benefit. But more concerning is the attack on private rights and private property rights. We saw in Canada that they recently froze bank accounts for people who protested or donated to protesters in Canada. We also saw that Canada have blocked foreign buyers. New Zealand have done the same thing as well. While blocking foreign buyers may be seen as a good thing, ultimately it means you're stripping the rights of the owners of those properties because they are no longer able to sell the properties to who they may wish to or the higher bidder, and therefore you're taking away some of their rights. These actions are eroding a very important principle of property rights. Private property principle rights have allowed businesses, people and banks have confidence to invest in land, build property, because there is a security of tenure there and there's a security of ownership. Property rights are the cornerstone of our economy, and if rights get stripped away, there will be a fall in confidence which will impact investment, lending and building as well. Ireland recently introduced rent control measures which made a lot of landlords sell up, which further deepened the rental crisis. Some political parties have also tried to introduce legislation allowing the state to force owners of properties to sell to the state for the public good under compulsory purchase orders, CPOs, mainly under the idea that vacant properties could be purchased by the state and used for public housing. This does seem well intentioned, but it's not how CPOs were originally designed or used in the past. In the past, CPOs were used to buy land that was used for the public good, such as public projects like roadways or railways. CPOs are generally used for the benefit of the public good as a whole, not to just benefit one individual family. One could argue that using CPOs to buy one property to benefit one family would not be a good use of taxpayers' money. Perhaps the state buying up vacant properties seems like a good idea, but allowing the state such powers erodes private property rights. And the major concern is, where do these powers stop? If a state can take over a vacant home and give it to a family, what stops the state taking over a 4-bed home that only has one occupant and giving it to a family of 4? I know that seems extreme, but it's my point. Where does the power stop, and where does the power of the state stop if we go down this route by eroding private property rights? Because once you start, you undermine the confidence in mortgages, investments, and trust within property rights, which will have an impact on building land, it will have an impact on lending, and it will have an impact on future investment. You might think I'm a little bit crazy even to suggest this next point, but for me it seems like a massive step backwards, a step in the wrong direction, a step away from private rights. We're going backwards to when kings and queens controlled who owned the land. In this case, it's not a king or a queen, but it is the state who controls the land. And I'm not sure I want the government having that much control and having such easy power as the CPO private property. I'd be very fearful for the government to have that much control over private property rights. I'd have far less worry about private companies buying up sites or buying up housing developments, because that can be regulated. But if the state has all that power, it's very hard to get that power back. I prefer the state to legislate for more tenancy rights rather than giving them far-reaching CPO powers. I don't know about you, but I would prefer the choice to be able to buy a property than be forced into state housing or rent from a private fund. Even if the ability to buy is hard, it should be the main goal of the state. But a lot of actions by the state, including buying and renting vast amounts of property, as well as land use control, is making it harder and harder for normal buyers to enter into the market. If we are moving to generation rent and the state is going to provide more and more state housing, what should we do to protect and grow our own wealth? Past generations used their own home to build up wealth and security. If that option is taken away from us in the future, what should future generations do? As more and more people become renters, politicians will have to take notice, because there will be more votes within the rental sector. And therefore, there is more likelihood that tenancy legislation will come into play and more rights will come to tenants. Unlike past generations, we now have the power to invest in a whole range of opportunities, even just using our own phone. If generation rent does kick in and take over, we need to consider building our wealth beyond the family home. Even investing in these property funds that are buying up all these properties and holding those investments for the long term. That old saying applies: if you can't beat them, join them. If the world does trend towards a rental world and rental generation really does kick in, it is so important that we legislate to protect renters and also give people the ability to invest in their pension for the long term. And perhaps a greater importance is placed on investing for the long term if we're not relying on our family homes to build wealth. Hopefully this video was a bit of food for thought for you. It is just my personal thoughts. I'm not getting into the rights or wrongs of it. I'm just trying to paint a picture of how I see things playing out at the moment. If you want to know more about property or real estate, consider signing up to our newsletter, link below. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching.